episode of The Higher Ground on the Wrazel Cannabis Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Farah, and today I'll be speaking with Michael Chernis. First, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor, though.
Founded by former NFL All-Pro Kyle Turley, NeuroXPF is a sports supplement company specializing in the medicinal benefits of cannabinoids. NeuroXPF makes and sells a full line of high-quality, certified organic, hemp-derived CBD products. All NeuroXPF products are THC-free. They use a special CO2 extracting process to isolate the CBD, working hard to preserve the terpenes in order to modulate the effects of their hemp-derived CBD. This adds that little extra punch to NeuroXPF products so they taste better and provide some beneficial qualities. To learn more about and purchase the NeuroXPF's products, please visit their website at neuroxpf.com. For more information about their current investment opportunity, please visit the Wrazel investment marketplace at wrazel.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm here with Michael Chernis, and we're going to be having a chat today about a variety of topics, including finding the right lawyer for you to help you through this process, through the licensing application process with the state and localities, some of the pitfalls and things to keep an eye out for. So I'm really looking forward to our talk today. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Farah. Nice to be here.
Thanks. Great to see you. So why don't we start out by just giving folks a little bit of information about your background, what kind of law you practice, and how you got involved in the cannabis industry, if you want to dig into it.
Sure. I, like you, started out in big law in New York and practiced in sort of two very large corporate litigation transactional law firms for about 14 years. And then I moved to California in 2008 to have a better lifestyle primarily. And while I was out here, I sort of became very much aware of the fact that cannabis was not only a growing business and industry that was not going, back into the bottle, but also was underserved by attorneys out there. So it was an opportunistic thing that I was living in Venice, California, surrounded by dispensaries, and came across people that needed attorneys. And at the same time, my mother had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So for both personal and professional reasons, I became very much interested in, initially anyway, helping patients get access to medicine, helping doctors stay out of trouble. And so that evolved to helping dispensaries and collectives and patients in criminal cases. And I've been essentially doing cannabis more and more to the point where 10 years later, it's basically all I do. Mostly on the transactional side, helping people with regulatory issues, obtain licenses, and should they run afoul of the law, help them get out of trouble. So I'm sort of all things when it comes to cannabis business and defense needs. And I'm based in Santa Monica, California.
Definitely a need in California. A lot of people, looking for help always with this licensing process. And as you found out, there's so many things within the cannabis industry that are very tricky and you could help out with, right? All the way from the medical to the adult use side.
Yeah, there's no shortage of needs in cannabis. I mean, as opposed to when I started, where it was essentially a one-trick pony, you had to know how to help people fall within the collective defense and help doctors avoid medical board prosecutions and losing their licenses. Now, it's basically no different than any other industry. It has the same needs as any other industry. There's just this little different layer when it comes to the uniqueness of cannabis, both under federal banking and tax standards and some other nuances. But otherwise, it's really no different than any other industry and any other business. They need the same things.
So a lot like any other company, something that I talk about a lot and that I find that a lot of cannabis companies need to hear is that they are like any other industry. I think a lot of people focus with cannabis and lawyers on the regulatory side of it, but they're a company that's going to need vendor contracts, need, a variety of corporate and other legal expertise as well, right?
Yes, exactly. And, the interesting thing about cannabis is that most of the clients that are at least legacy businesses are not comfortable with, let alone experienced in dealing with attorneys. If they've had to deal with an attorney, it's usually for a bad reason. And that's one of the things that separates a cannabis business, or at least some of the legacy clients from different types of industries, where a lot of the founders in those different kinds of businesses in those other industries are used to dealing with lawyers, are sort of more sophisticated about how maybe you can't ask one lawyer to do everything. Maybe there are lawyers with different specialties, but what separates cannabis now from other industries is not the needs of the businesses, but it's really, I think, the ability of the client and the experience of the client in identifying what its different needs might be vis-a-vis different attorneys.
Yeah, different specialists. A lot of people don't have any experience with that. Let's dig into that a little bit, actually, because I think, small companies usually can only afford a lawyer on a one-off basis for a specific matter. But I think as they continue to grow, they need to consider having an attorney who's inside counsel, in-house counsel, who's there all the time. But what are your thoughts about kind of this process and what their options are maybe along that continuum between strictly outside counsel and strictly in-house counsel?
Yeah, I mean, most companies don't have the luxury of having what amounts to an inside counsel, which is basically a full-time lawyer. A full-time lawyer is going to cost a company anywhere from at least $150,000 a year to maybe $500,000 a year, with different benefits and equity packages, et cetera. And a lot of startups just don't have that. So they use attorneys on an as-needed basis. And what ends up happening over time is that there's a point of diminishing returns where you start using the outside lawyer more and more. They're charging you hourly rates of, $200, $300, $500, $1,000 an hour. And at some point, it just becomes inefficient to operate that way. Not to mention the fact when having somebody sort of inside on a more regular basis, the benefit of the attorney helping you, not just putting out a fire, but you get the benefit of the attorney being involved in strategic decisions that can avoid, something that's smoking even becoming a fire. So, but again, most businesses just aren't at the point where they can afford that. But I think a lot of businesses should strive to get to the point through different packages, compensation packages, where they can bring somebody in on a full-time basis, because it'll save them money and it'll also give them more benefit in terms of like business strategy decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think as soon as you can, if you're filling out your executive suite, it's really important to consider at least the option of having someone with a legal background, or who's going to serve that role in another way, maybe, who is the conservative, a little more risk-adverse advisor who can raise potential issues and questions. But as you said, not everyone has the luxury of being able to afford to have somebody full-time on staff who's doing that, which is where having like a really trusted advisor, I think, outside, at least to start, is really important. I think do you serve as outside counsel, outside in-house counsel for any companies, or do you kind of do some of that work for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, and just to be clear, because like, I think there's like, we're using like this vernacular, outside, inside, and general counsel. I think for most people, it's a little bit unfamiliar. I think the difference between being just an attorney that's on a project basis versus an attorney that's not inside counsel, but is sort of more an outside, inside counsel, is the extent to which the client will rely on that attorney. So if the client is relying, in my view, if a client hires the attorney or me to do a one-off thing, help us with a licensing application, draft a contract, I'm just, an attorney for hire. I'm basically an independent contractor, and you call me when you need me, as opposed to treating the attorney like anything that comes down the pike that I need an attorney for. I'm going to start out calling Chernis, and Chernis will tell me if he can handle it. And if Chernis can't handle it, Chernis will tell me who can handle it, and more likely will find somebody that can handle it. So I do serve in that role for most of my clients. Like I have a bunch of clients that I've been with for a long time. So a lot of them are legacy businesses, and I'm their only attorney that they regularly use. And they'll start with me, and they'll look me to problem solve. Even if it's outside my scope, they'll look for me to find somebody who can solve. So yeah, I consider myself outside, inside counsel or outside general counsel to a number of my clients in that way.
Yeah, I like that distinction and clarity for people who aren't as familiar, because we talked about having this option of it being potentially very expensive to have someone on staff, one of your employees. And the benefit is that they're there day to day. They see everything that's going on. And then an attorney who you pay hourly on a project basis. But really, the possibility that there's even this option in between where you found somebody that you can really rely on and maybe extend it beyond just specific projects, just specifically helping me with the application, and really expanding it to, okay, anytime any issue comes up within the business that there's something that seems like a legal question, being able to loop in somebody who can at least know whether another specialist needs to be brought in, who is the appropriate person to advise on this. And I like that. I think that your clients are going to be in a much better position that they are even asking those questions to you, right? Because there are so many people that if they don't know what to do with it and they don't have the right advisors, they're left to figure it out on their own, which isn't always the best path forward.
Exactly. I mean, I think maybe I'm dating myself a little bit, but the concept of being like a consigliere, if everybody's seen Godfather and they know that term, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a negative connotation, but even if you're a client of mine and you're asking me about something that's outside my scope, whether it's IP or some esoteric employment labor issue, like if you have a relationship with an attorney that you trust and you like their judgment, that relationship can expand into different areas. It can expand into business areas. It can expand into all kinds of different legal areas. And it's really the place to start. And it's hard to find that. It's hard to find that in the non-cannabis space. It's hard to find that in any relationship. But when you're able to find somebody that you truly trust and you appreciate their judgment and their input, that's time to start thinking about that person as a consigliere or an inside counsel who can really be a contributing member to the team on a broader basis than just on a one-off.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I think there's a lot of issues with companies having to figure these things out on their own, interacting with different aspects of their business that are questions that a legal advisor really could weigh in on. But if we don't know about it, if you're not there to hear that it's happening, then you don't get that opportunity. But at least if you have a trusted advisor on retainer and there's more communication and more flow, you're more likely to be able to prevent issues before they really become big issues.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, Farah, that I'm laughing because this happens every week with clients who are, especially in cannabis, but not even just in cannabis, they're still so apprehensive about telling their attorney the information that the attorney needs to make the judgment. And there's this, we have to get kind of past that. And it's not just in cannabis, like in other contexts where I represented clients, and I'm sure you have too, like there is this, like, I don't want to tell the attorney because the attorney's like telling the government, and if I don't tell them, maybe they won't find out. But again, I think the more you're able to view the attorney as a resource and as opposed to like a problem, and view them as a problem solver, and appreciate that maybe they can contribute early on, in the end, it'll just save you money and it'll save you some pain, I think.
Oh yeah, I hope all my viewers really heard that message. Like, please don't lie or withhold information from your attorney. If they're your attorney, they are there to help you. And even if it's something that they have to disclose to the state because you've told them, it's still better to know now and to deal with it in the present as soon as possible. If it's going to be an issue, you're going to want to know if it's something that's going to be a big issue down the road.
Yeah, it's like I was telling a client just the other day, it's like having a doctor, like you're having your primary physician, and you go to your primary physician and you're complaining about, I have a stomach ache, and the primary physician's asking you, well, are you drinking? No. Are you smoking? No. And you're not giving them all this information, and yet you kind of expect them and hope for them to solve the problem and diagnose the problem, and you're not sharing with them the information. Like, it's the same thing. But I think it's worse with lawyers than it is with doctors. I think people are more, willing to tell the doctor what's going on. But with the lawyer, there's still this like historic, like if I don't tell them about it, maybe it won't be. So it's part of the challenge I think that we face. And I think again, it's mostly with legacy businesses, but it's not explicitly and exclusively to legacy businesses or to cannabis businesses. There's always this reluctance to be honest with the lawyer because it's not a relationship that's necessarily born of trust as much as it's born of a necessity, at least in the first stages.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand within this industry as we move from a legacy to a regulated market, there's a lot of people who, across the board with all of these professionals, not used to running a business in that particular way or being within the law, right? That there are even laws and regulations to apply other than, being aware that they had to operate outside of the law while it was illegal. Now there's all these regulations, and it's just something that's was not a part of the legacy industry. So I understand it's intimidating, and Michael, we're pretty scary. We're scary lawyers. People don't want to tell us things, do they?
I think I'm scarier than you are. But...
Yeah, I say that. My approach is always to, even negotiating. I negotiate with kindness because it's like we're trying to reach a mutual agreement here. Like we're both trying to do something together. Why are we going to be adversaries about it? And I think the same goes for our clients, especially, right? Our clients shouldn't view us as a potential opponent or someone to hide information from. It's like you literally hired us to be on your side and to help advocate. So we need all the information. You're going to have to be honest with us, even if we're going to yell at you about something you've been doing.
Yeah, sometimes it takes multiple conversations to get there. But in any case, I think the point is to just, if you can find somebody that you really trust in, and is not just going to BS you and make you feel good about a situation, but actually help you understand what the deal is and what you're facing, what your options are, even if it's something you don't want to hear, then that's somebody that you can really build a relationship around for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So shifting gears a little bit, and I think related to this discussion that we've been having is about dealing with licensing authorities and the cities and the state, and how having an attorney and an advisor is really going to help with that process. But I think also just kind of letting people know about some of the things to expect as you go through that and some of the challenges that you've become familiar with through your practice and dealing with those. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of that, what problems you've had and challenges you faced?
So, we're focused on California. And so in California, anyway, the licensing process here is what's known as a dual licensing system. You have to get a local permission slip, permit, approval before you can go to the state and get their permission. Dealing with the state is generally a rubber stamp. I mean, there are things that are disqualifiers, and they can be bureaucratic, but the biggest hurdle is getting the local permission. And for better or worse, MCRSA, our state regulation, our state law that governs licensing, gives each city, as you know, the authority to decide whether it's going to allow cannabis business activity, whether it's going to allow all of it, whether it's going to allow some of it, whether it's going to have a cap, how they're going to allocate those licenses. And I think a lot of people who are either new to cannabis or have been thinking about getting a license, maybe they were in the traditional market and they want to convert over. I think a lot of people might come at it a little bit naively in terms of how easy it might be or what the process might be. But the reality is that it really depends on where you are. And just like back in the day when we were dealing with collectives, some cities had bans on collectives, some cities it was kind of gray. It's really up to the individual city whether they're going to give you an opportunity to get a license for whatever activity you want. And it's also up to the city about how they're going to allocate those licenses, what they're going to cost. And at the end of the day, in some cities, you have no chance. And in some cities, you may have a shot, but it may be competitive and cost you a lot of money. And in other cities, the way they go about doing things is pretty sloppy and unfair. And it really just depends.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that we've seen across the board, not just in California, but across the country, has been a real disadvantage for the smaller players. A lot of these jurisdictions make it very difficult to navigate the process and expensive as well, sometimes, right?
Tremendously unfair, and it's tremendously stilted towards the MSO or the multi-state operator or the big operator. And the reason is because Most of these cities don't know anything about cannabis regulation. They've always been coming from a place of fear, and fear meant not allowing it. And now, like, fear means like seriously controlling who holds the licenses. Like we're only going to allow you to have 4 dispensary licenses, and we're going to have this exhaustive application process that asks you like more things than you've been asked. I mean, I can't even think of an analog to how invasive these questions get. Like, you could more easily open up a nuclear power plant. But one of the areas that they ask about, and they have these outside consultants that grade you and give you scores, they ask about what your experience is. And and the cities and the consultants become enamored with people or businesses that can say, hey, we've been operating in 5 states. Hey, we've got 10 licenses. Cities figure, oh, well, that's a good one. Like, we're not going to have to take a risk on them. And obviously, without mentioning names, there are only a handful of businesses that can really stake a claim to having licenses in other states for dispensaries, especially because that's the most competitive. So what you end up having is these same cities giving these same operators the same limited opportunities, and it really leaves the local and smaller operators out in the cold. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we're seeing right now during the shakeup and during, a period of financial difficulty for everyone across the board is that is not, the MSOs are not a guarantee to knowing how to run the business necessarily, or to being successful. Just like everybody else, they're new to this game and trying to figure it out, and they might have some more capital to be able to really get invested in multiple states at the same time. But I think that my personal opinion is that we're really missing out on a lot of offerings that could be to the consumers and to the state's benefit as well, to have smaller operators, some more diversity of product choice and type of store and type of owners, everything. It's limited a lot of that, and I think to everyone's detriment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, like, I'm not in a position to judge MSOs and whether the MSO does it better than like the smaller operator, but it's like anything else. I mean, you can go on, whether you're buying a car or you're buying a bed or you're buying a computer or you're buying, something to eat at a restaurant. Like, sometimes the big brand does it really well. And sometimes the upstart, whether it's a Tesla or some other startup in another industry, maybe they have something innovative and creative, or maybe they've just been around for 20 years in medical cannabis and really have a good sense of what their consumers want and what are good products to have. And you can't replace that kind of experience, but the cities don't always like look into it with that level, that granular detail, and they're missing out. And it's just an unfortunate part of the application process. It's hard for the little guy, it's hard for the startup to get noticed. They really have to work twice as hard. They have to have as much money as the brand, and they have to do more aggressive lobbying. That being said, another category of scoring that plays a huge role in these cities is your local roots. So even if a big brand comes in and says, we've been doing this for 5 years, we have 10 licensed stores, if you can show, and I have a client that's doing this in another jurisdiction right now in California, if you can show we're all locally raised, we all have like deep connections to the community, we're in touch with what the community is about, like that actually does go a long way, and that also stands out. So it's not all bad for the local smaller operator. There are ways of kind of making yourself shine and stand out. And it's, to answer your question, which you asked and I didn't really answer, where does the lawyer help out? The lawyer helps out because the lawyer can help you put your best foot forward. The lawyer can help out by trying to get answers for you from a city that may not be easy for you to get. The lawyer certainly should be able to help out in helping you put together a polished application, and also helping you identify, if you're looking at different jurisdictions, where you might have a decent shot. Because a consultant might not be as forthright with you as a lawyer, but if a lawyer is paying a lawyer and the lawyer is worth their salt, they're going to tell you and then hopefully give you the honest shake on like whether you have a shot at it. So you're not firing your bullets in a jurisdiction where you really don't have a good chance.
Yeah, and I think, both the consultants and the lawyers sometimes have a relationship with the city or have gone through some of these applications and might have a better sense of what kind of information they're looking for. Or I think generally working on this bigger project of improving the perception of cannabis companies and cannabis consumers to the cities, right? And certainly in California, where we have this regime that you described, that each city gets to decide whether they're going to allow cannabis, and traditionally that's really excluded those businesses. I wonder what else we can be doing on the educational front to improve that overall and just have more opportunity, have more licenses available, right? If we can change the city's mind, they can open up some more licenses, and then there are more businesses that could participate potentially.
Yeah, it's sort of an ongoing battle. 10 years ago, there was maybe 4 cities in the state that allowed legal medical collectives to operate. West Hollywood, San Francisco, Oakland, and maybe one other. And now I don't know what it is, how many cities. There are obviously quite a few, maybe a couple hundred, but there's still like 70% of the state is still prohibiting most business activities, including dispensaries. So I think what's going to happen naturally is that more cities are going to get the sense that they have to have this because they need the tax revenue. And it's not realistic to think they're going to jump in with both feet and keep it as a wide open process. But hopefully what will happen is as we become a little bit more into McCurson, there's more time has passed and there hasn't been like this tragic, all the kids are smoking cannabis and getting high. Like as soon as we can sort of get past that stereotype and they start treating it more as a business, then I think some of the regulations fall away and they realize, you know what, we can all benefit from this and we don't have to be so rigid about it. And maybe some of these big brands are going to fail. And I think that's just a natural side effect of kind of like of any industry really. So I think there will be more opportunity in cities and more opportunities for more cities over time. And what can we do to help that along? You just have to keep pushing your local government and going to city council meetings and being an advocate, meeting with your city council members and just being a pest. If you can't afford to hire a pest, be a pest.
Yeah, I think that's so important in cannabis and generally in politics right now. If there's something that you feel passionate about, you got to go bug your local representatives and call them every day and be annoying or pay someone to be annoying for you.
Yeah, that's what we just get paid to be annoying, but we try to do it in a little bit more of a subtle way. But at the end of the day, like the squeaky wheel definitely gets rewarded. And I've seen in others, even though it certainly helps to have money for lobbyists and lawyers, while most startups don't have that, I've seen cities where if you're going out to a meeting on cannabis and you're there every time and you're asking questions and you're participating and the city is even-handed and they're not, shall I say, corrupt, they will take notice of you. And if you present yourself well, they'll pay attention to you. It's happened before. So if you can't afford the lawyer and you can't afford the mouthpiece, you have to just go and be your own mouthpiece and your own advocate.
Yeah, something that I've been aware of within the cannabis industry and the way these regulations come about is that often, from my perspective, or what I've heard, is that the cities and states are often looking for guidance. They do want information because they don't know what these businesses should look like. There's a lot of questions, a lot of information they don't have, and a lot of familiarity they don't have with it. And if someone is going to come and provide some of that expertise and that information and say, hey, we've seen this play out in other states, or hey, I'm familiar with this industry and here's some information that would make these regulations better, I would hope that they would be open to that. And I know sometimes they are. Sometimes they're looking for that, and sometimes it can be a challenge, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's happened a lot. Like a lot of, again, it's mostly the bigger brands and the bigger names that sort of do that kind of outreach. But if you have a local connection in your city, whether it's with a city council member or anybody in planning or anybody that's connected to one of those people, they work for you and they're supposed to accept your request to meet with them. And if you approach them and say, we're really interested in cannabis, we understand it's new for this city, And we would just like to have a dialogue about it. And you do it in the right way. There's no reason why they should turn you down.
Yeah, that'd be great. I hope more people do that. And I think that you're right that we're going to see that continue to change and more cities opting into participating in this cannabis program. They're not going to be able to say no to the tax revenue.
Apricot Analytics is a full-service product quality lab for cannabis testing and CBD and hemp testing. They have over a decade of analytical lab experience and have been working with cannabis products since 2005. Apricot Analytics understands the needs of cannabis and hemp producers because they were producers themselves. They know the challenges, the frustrations, and the dreams of cultivators and manufacturers. They get it because they've been there, and they're here to help. Apricot Analytics tests your products for the good stuff, like THC and CBD concentrations, and helps you identify any of the bad stuff, like pesticides, mold, bacteria, and heavy metals. For more information, go to apricotanalytics.com, or to learn more about their current investment opportunity, go to the Wrazel Investment Marketplace at wrazel.com.
I'm here in South Orange County, and it is very limited. We don't have a lot of dispensaries here. They're all concentrated in North County, and I'd love to see that evolve as these regulations change.
Well, it is. I mean, as you may know, COVID and the whole, Black Lives Matter movement has had an impact on cities across California and across the country in terms of budgeting and how they want to use their budget. And cities are redirecting funds towards, away from law enforcement, but they're also looking to plug gaps, especially gaps that result from the lack of tourism and industry. And in the last few months, several cities, even in Orange County, have explored having cannabis licensing. Even Anaheim, which for years was fighting against all these upstart illegal dispensaries, had a serious discussion about it, ultimately decided not to proceed with it at the moment. But there's at least one other city, Fullerton, that is definitely going to have cannabis businesses. And there are several other cities that are considering it. So yeah, the orange curtain definitely moves a little slower than the rest of California, but it's just a matter of time. And especially when they start seeing the benefits. I mean, the benefits to owning a cannabis business and with the tax consequences as they are not so great for the operator right now, but they're huge windfalls for the cities. They're tremendous windfalls for the cities. And there's really no fiscal reason why they should resist it, except for in Anaheim where they're afraid of upsetting, Mickey Mouse.
Disneyland. That name will not be spoken. Well, I think that the changes that are happening locally here are definitely going to be representative also of dominoes falling throughout the country, and as things continue to change everywhere. And we see that evolving and people who are pushing for those changes. And I appreciate your work, one of them, and really helping people be aware that they should be in contact with the representatives who are working for us and who should be helping form these laws in a way that benefit us. And if we want that, we got to ask for it.
Yeah. And again, like if you can afford it, you should definitely find a lawyer or a lobbyist that can help you in the process. I mean, the reality is that, this might sound harsh, but if you can't afford to have a lawyer to help you in this endeavor, chances are you really can't afford to have a successful business or a startup business. But I would suggest that you definitely factor into your budget having legal representation, because even if they don't do a lot of work, having somebody that you can lean on, having somebody that you can bring to a meeting that can help you put your best foot forward, it's all beneficial in the end, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, to that point, can you share with my viewers where they can find you? Hopefully anybody in California who needs some legal advice and can help, is working within the cannabis industry, might be interested in talking to you further about their business.
I would love to. You can call me at 310-566-4388. You can find me online at www.chernislaw.com, and that's CHERNISLAW.com, or you can email me, Michael@chernislaw.com, CHERNISLAW.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for this talk today. I think this was really productive and hopefully helpful to our viewers. And, it's been great having you on.
It's been great being here. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Michael. We'll talk soon.